My name is Paul. It was May 16th, 2024, and I was traveling along a desolate American highway, heading to a business meeting that would change my life. The hot summer sun filtered through the windshield while the radio played an old rock song that I liked a lot. The endless mountains provided a backdrop to a landscape that seemed painted by a skilled artist. My mind was immersed in thoughts about what awaited me beyond the horizon. I was focused on the road, but suddenly, without warning, something went terribly wrong. A deafening noise tore through the air as my vehicle was suddenly thrown out of control. Time slowed to an eternal moment as the car staggered, dancing along the edge of the highway before violently crashing into a guardrail. Pain shot through my body like lightning. I felt the glass shatter around me, the metal bend, and the sensation of heaviness and inability to move. I realized I was trapped in the vehicle. Blood pounded in my ears as I struggled to catch my breath, trying to understand what had happened. Daylight turned into a blurred fusion of colors as the air filled with the smell of burning. Then everything went silent. A sense of peace enveloped me as I slowly detached from physical reality. I was out of my body, observing the scene from above. I watched my injured self, trapped among the wreckage. It was strange to see myself in that condition, but I felt no fear or panic. It was as if an invisible force was keeping me safe, as if someone was guiding me through this experience. I felt relieved and light as I moved through the rugged landscape. I saw the sun high in the sky and the deserted highway stretching into infinity. Then, in front of me, a figure appeared. He was a tall, thin man, elegantly dressed in clothes that seemed to belong to a past era. His face radiated calm and wisdom, with eyes that seemed to peer into the soul. "Welcome," he said in a voice that seemed to resonate within me. "Do not fear. I am here to guide you." I approached slowly, almost in a trance. "Who are you?" I managed to ask in a faint voice. "Let me show you," he replied, and suddenly we were surrounded by a radiant light that seemed to come from all directions. I felt enveloped by an indescribable sensation of warmth and love as my guide led me forward, through the very fabric of time and space. We found ourselves suddenly in an unfamiliar city. It was a vibrant and crowded place, with buildings rising toward the sky and streets full of life. But something was wrong. The air was charged with tension and fear. People were running back and forth, their faces contorted with anguish. "This is the city you know," said my guide. "Look carefully." I followed his gaze and saw a massive hurricane rapidly approaching from the U.S. coasts, threatening several cities along the southeast coast. The black clouds twisted and contorted like living beings, threatening to swallow everything in their path. I saw people trying to escape, houses being ripped apart, and terror spreading like a wave. "This is the storm you must face," said the man gravely. "But it is not just a physical storm." With a wave of his hand, the scenery changed again. I found myself in a hospital, surrounded by worried faces and machines emitting monotonous sounds. I immediately recognized the faces of my family, gathered around me with tears in their eyes. I was in bed, immobile, as doctors frantically tried to save my life. "This is your fate if you choose to return," the man said seriously. "You can still make your choice." I felt torn between two worlds. On one side was peace and the absence of pain. On the other was the love and life I would leave behind. The decision seemed impossible to make. "I am not afraid of death," I said firmly, "but I am afraid of leaving those I love." The man nodded with compassion. Your choice is courageous. Always remember that your path is part of a greater design. Then, suddenly, I was back in the wrecked vehicle. The pressure of the metal against my body made me realize I was still alive. I felt the pain return to me like a rising tide. Rescue arrived quickly afterward, taking me away in an ambulance while the world spun around me. I never forgot the encounter with the mysterious man and the visions I had seen. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still feel his presence beside me, guiding me through the storms of life. As I lay in the hospital bed, the days passed slowly. Every movement was a struggle. Every breath a reminder of the pain I had endured. But my mind was elsewhere, constantly returning to that mysterious figure and the vision of the city devastated by the hurricane. I began to seek answers. I spoke with doctors, nurses, anyone who would listen. I wanted to understand if what I had seen was real or just a product of my imagination, a creation of my mind in shock. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the face of my guide and heard his calm voice telling me not to fear. I wondered if he was an angel, a spirit guide, or simply an illusion. One night, while sleeping in the hospital bed, I had a vivid dream. I was back in the devastated city, but this time, I could see the details clearly. I saw familiar faces in the fleeing crowd, friends and relatives desperately trying to save themselves. The scene was apocalyptic, with buildings collapsing and flames licking the sky. Suddenly, the mysterious figure appeared by my side again. "This is a vision of the future that you can still change," he said gravely. "Your vision could help many people if you use it correctly." I woke up with a start, sweating and with my heart pounding. The man's words echoed in my mind like an echo. I decided I had to do something, but I didn't know where to start. As days passed, I started looking for information on natural disasters, hurricanes, and their devastating effects. I read articles, watched documentaries, and spoke with experts. I didn't tell anyone the real reason for my sudden interest. It was a secret I jealously guarded. Occasionally, I thought about revealing it to someone, but something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of being considered crazy, or perhaps the fear of changing the course of events in an unpredictable way. Time passed inexorably. I continued to gather information, trying to mentally prepare for what could happen. I was torn between the idea of doing something and the awareness that maybe nothing I did could change destiny. One day, while walking in the park near the hospital, I met an old childhood friend. I hadn't seen him in years, and our meeting brought me some relief. We talked about the past, the old times, and without meaning to, I ended up telling him about my experience. I didn't mention the vision explicitly, but I hinted that I felt something big and terrible could happen. My friend looked at me with concern, but didn't ask questions. "Whatever happens, you know you can count on me," he said, warmly shaking my hand. Those words gave me unexpected strength. Maybe I couldn't change the future, but I could prepare myself and those close to me. Talking, he made me aware of some stories beyond life that many people around the world claim to have had. He also said that he sometimes liked to listen to them, and even gave me the name of your channel, which is exactly how I came to you. Day by day, I realized that every time I talked to someone, I managed to complete a piece of the puzzle at a time. Conversations helped me put together the fragments of that unsettling vision, and this process made me realize that keeping everything to myself was not the solution. So, I convinced myself that I had to make my story public and share it with as many people as possible. It was necessary for everyone to be aware of what I had seen, not to create panic, but to give everyone the opportunity to prepare and act with greater awareness. I want to be clear. I don't know if what I saw will actually happen. I have no certainty that that vision will come true. However, I couldn't live peacefully knowing that, if it happened, I hadn't done anything to warn others. Despite doubts and uncertainties, deep down, I know I could have made a difference, that I could have saved even one life. And this thought drives me to act. Please, don't be frightened like I was, but pay a little more attention. Even if my words seem far from reality, reflect on what I've said and consider taking some precautions. I'm not asking you to live in fear, but to be ready and aware. My hope is that by sharing my experience, you can face the future with greater serenity and preparation, knowing you have done everything possible to protect yourself and your loved ones.
This experience of mine happened in the summer of 2017. At that time, I had been divorced for 5 years. I was a single mother, and I was living with my son. Single parents face many challenges, and I was no exception. After my divorce, I needed to take on the responsibility of caring for my son while dealing with other stressors. This was a time when I needed to be stronger than others and needed to create a stable living environment for myself and my son. I love my children deeply. My son is my strength and motivation, whether it is difficult in life or mentally exhausting. I not only want to provide for his material needs, but also give him love and care. Despite the many difficulties I have faced, I have never given up. I always believed that the future would be better if I persisted in my efforts. It was a hot weekend. My colleague and I often went out together. She was in a similar situation as me and was also a single mother. In the past year, we often rode bikes or hiked together. This time, my coworker suggested we go on a rafting experience. We were all very excited when we found out about it. We started planning the time and place. We simply packed our bags and then started our rafting trip. An hour later, we arrived at our destination and excitedly rented 2 rafting boats. Boating was a very enjoyable thing to do in this hot summer. We paddled, enjoying the cool water and the beautiful scenery, and the kids were very happy. Soon we came to the main river. I put my feet in the water and felt the coolness of the current. We soon came to the first bend, and the current suddenly became fast. We carefully controlled the direction and speed of the boat. We managed to avoid the rocks and branches in the river. We continued on through the river, enjoying the beautiful scenery along the way. After about an hour or so, we came across a more dangerous bend. My colleague and I felt some nervousness, but we trusted our skills. As the boat went through the bend, it unfortunately hit a rock underwater. I lost my balance and eventually fell into the water. The water was moving faster and faster, and I was trying to control my body. The boat was getting farther and farther away from me, and I felt very scared and desperate. I was carried by the current into deeper water, and the undertow began to wrap around me, gradually making it impossible for me to breathe properly. I struggled to get a breath of fresh air, but I could not reach the surface of the water. I used all my strength, hoping to surface, but all my efforts were to no avail. I began to lose consciousness, and my whole body sank underwater. I felt the water around me gradually become still, and only the sound of my heartbeat echoed in the darkness. I began to remember my past experiences. I grew up as a strong child, always challenging myself. I grew up to be a single mother living alone with my child. I worked twice as hard for the sake of my children. No one could appreciate this hard work for me. I now don't have the panic I had before, but only one idea: to give up the struggle and accept the fact. I thought it might be a relief. Suddenly, I felt someone grab my clothes and bring me to the surface of the water. I felt my body become very light, as if I had gained a new life. The sun shone on my face, making me feel very comfortable. The breeze blew across my skin, giving me a cool sensation. I noticed that a tree appeared in front of me, which was very tall. The breeze blew through the leaves, and they made a wonderful sound as if they were speaking to me. I felt like I was part of this tree and that I was breathing with this tree. Here, everything around me seemed to be alive. The trees and flowers became more distinct. I felt like my vision was magnified, and every detail became clear. Suddenly, a small bird flew over my head. I could hear its crisp song and feel its happy mood. I didn't need to turn around to see everything that was happening around me, because my vision had expanded to look anywhere I wanted. I felt that I had become part of the world, that I was one with it. At the same time, I could see what was happening below. My son crawled out of the water with difficulty. His clothes were soaked through. Thankfully, he didn't seem to be hurt. I have to find a way to save my mom. These were his most real thoughts at that time. Suddenly, a huge figure appeared in front of me. I felt an intense love, a feeling that is hard to put into words. I knew this was God. He smiled at me and then said, "My son, welcome home. I have seen how hard you have worked and given for your son, and I know all that you have gone through. You don't have to worry because I will never leave you." God invited me for a walk in the garden. We walked and talked. I was struck by the beauty of the many strange creatures and plants that I saw here. Some of the creatures emitted a soft glow that made the whole heaven bright and mysterious. I saw a butterfly with particularly beautiful wings. Its wings were covered with spots of various colors. Under the sunlight, each color emitted a jewel-like glow. In addition to the creatures, I also saw some exotic plants. One of them was a tree whose trunk and leaves were glowing blue and purple. The leaves emitted a faint fragrance, making me feel as if I was in a fairy tale world. I felt very happy in this magical paradise. I felt true peace, as if the whole world had become gentle and beautiful. I knew that these wonderful sights would become memories that I would never forget. God took me into the depths of the garden. Sometimes God would point out to me some special spots and tell me the stories and mysteries of the area. In a meadow, I saw a little rabbit that was busy nibbling on a blade of grass. God told me that this little rabbit was a symbol of joy. In another corner, I saw a cute little squirrel. It was hopping happily as if it was looking for some treasure. God told me that this little squirrel represents good luck. Here, every creature and plant has its own story and symbolism, and together they make up this wonderful paradise. It is also a delightful thing to walk in paradise. Finally, God asked me, "What do you want to choose next?" I understood that I needed to make a choice, to stay or to go back. At this moment, I felt very torn inside because I didn't know what to do. Staying in heaven, I could continue to enjoy this beauty and happiness, but I would lose the opportunity to be with my loved ones. I understand that this matter is completely up to me. No one is forcing me to make this or that choice, and no one is guiding me. God just silently waited for me and gave me time to think. I didn't know then what I should do. When I saw God smile, I suddenly felt a surge of strength. This strength gave me stronger courage and confidence. I knew that no matter what choice I made, God would always be with me, and His love would always be there for me. In the end, I decided to return to the real world. I knew that it was not an easy decision, but I believed that I had made the right choice. At the moment I turned to leave, I saw God smile and nod. I felt my soul being gently wrapped by an invisible force, which carried me slowly out of heaven. Then I felt as if I was flying, and the scenery around me began to become clearer and clearer. I saw blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds. I knew God was sending me back to earth. Slowly I began to feel the weight of my body. My soul was slowly merging with my body. A powerful energy passed through my body and made me feel my presence again. When I returned to my body, I felt full of power. I swam to the surface with all the strength I could muster. I spit out the silt in my mouth and took a deep breath. At this moment, my lungs were so sore that it felt worse than drowning, but I knew I needed to keep going because my son needed me. I felt my strength growing, a strength that came from within me and from the blessing and love of God. I felt like every cell in my body was cheering me on and giving me strength. My breathing started to become steady. My lungs felt a little better. There was still some pain, but it was much better than earlier. I started to swim closer to the shore so I could grab the rocks with my hands. Finally, I managed to reach the shore. I felt my whole body trembling, but at the same time, I also felt an inexplicable joy. I lay down on the shore, my whole body helpless. Just then, I heard a familiar voice. It was my son calling out to me. He and some tourists were running to me. I struggled to open my eyes, and my son's expression was full of worry. My son was hugging me, and tears were streaming down his face. I gently patted his back and reassured him, "Mom is fine, don't worry." Finally, the administrator took me to the nearest hospital. In the hospital, the doctor checked my body. The doctor told me there was nothing serious, just a need to rest for a few days. I am very grateful to those who have helped me. I thank them for their timely help, and I also thank God for his blessing and care. In the hospital, I felt the love of my son. He was always by my side. He was worried that I would get bored, so he kept talking to me. I lamented my good fortune to have such a loving son. I know that I must continue to fight for my son, show him through my actions how strong and brave his mother is. To this day, I think back to this experience often. I thank God for this opportunity to be born again. I know I made the right choice. I proved that God and his love are real. I feel incredibly blessed that he has always been there for me. The first story is finished. If you've made it this far, you can't miss the second story. Enjoy listening. When I was 19, I was attending art school and was firmly skeptical about any form of spirituality. That day, I was battling a persistent sore throat, and my mother gave me a painkiller. Unfortunately, I had an adverse reaction and lost consciousness in her arms, collapsing to the ground. Suddenly, I found myself floating outside of my body, passing through a dark tunnel with a bright light at the end. The light seemed to communicate with me, but without words, only through thoughts. A sense of peace and well-being enveloped me, and I felt an irresistible desire to reach that light, which emanated total and unconditional love. However, all of a sudden, I received a clear message. It is not your time yet. You must go back. I didn't want to return. I felt so good that the idea of leaving that peace filled me with sadness. But in an instant, I found myself back in my mother's arms. I told her about what I had experienced, adding that death does not exist because we are spiritual beings. From that day on, my outlook on life completely changed. I was no longer skeptical, but I remained in search of deeper meaning and answers, especially regarding the pain and suffering of life. One day, while flipping through a magazine in my doctor's waiting room, I came across an article about the path of Taoism. I immediately felt that this philosophy spoke directly to me and to the questions I was asking. However, I also understood that it was not yet the time to delve deeper into that knowledge, but I was certain that the day would come when I would follow that path. Now I am 68 years old and can say that I have lived a life full of experiences. I have faced numerous challenges with courage and determination. For many years, I have practiced Taoism and have found a great master who has guided me along the way. As a Taoist, I firmly believe in the harmony of the universe and the continuity of the soul. My near-death experience taught me that the body is just a temporary vessel for our spiritual growth and happiness, as well as for the happiness of the beings we meet along our journey. Alicia's testimony has the potential to be transformative, as her life was saved by an NDE experience, and listening to it carefully, two profound teachings emerge that can enrich our lives. I am Charlotte, and I simply ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. In this way, not only will you help the channel, but you will also make my day better. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was September 2005, and I found myself in an extremely difficult situation. With 3 children aged 8, 5, and 3, and a marriage that had just ended, I was in a critical situation. I had to take care of my children completely on my own, without any support. To meet my family's needs, I had started working 2 or even 3 different jobs simultaneously, a sacrifice that was taking a toll on my health. Health setbacks were becoming more frequent, but I didn't talk about them with anyone. More than once I had felt myself fainting, losing consciousness, but on all occasions I was alone. I couldn't afford to collapse. I had to be strong for my 3 children who depended entirely on me. But there was one thing that made me feel even worse, and it was precisely the cause of the divorce. Unfortunately, a year ago, I had fallen into an affair outside of marriage. It involved a person similar to the one I encountered every morning in my routine. Over time, we got to know each other better, and more than once, I didn't respect the marriage. Being a very emotional person, I suffered a lot, and in the end, it all exploded. When I decided to tell my husband, I knew it wouldn't be easy for him to forgive me. However, I didn't think he would make the decision to leave home, leaving me with 3 children completely alone. I am a Christian, although I have always attended church little because I didn't have time, and I never had the opportunity to deepen my faith. But I never thought that one day the church would enter my life and change it forever. It was evening, around 7 p.m., and I had had a particularly stressful day. My jobs overlapped, and I had to run from one end of my country to the other. My car, old and worn out, didn't help my travels at all. That day, when I finally sat in the car to go home, I felt a sharp pain in my chest and right arm. The pain intensified in less than a minute, and I tried to find relief by stretching the seat and my legs as much as possible in my car. But it seemed that nothing could alleviate the feeling of oppression until the pain literally took my breath away. Suddenly, I felt strange, light, but in a situation that was not entirely normal. I saw many blurry figures around me, and I began to ask, "Where are we?" Then a man approached me. I only remember that he was tall with curly brown hair, and his smile radiated great reassurance. The closer he got, the warmer I felt. However, I remembered being in the car, so I immediately said that I had to go home to my children, who were with my neighbor. The man smiled at me and asked me to follow him. We went towards a temple made of beautiful marble. In the middle there was a kind of puddle of water. Then he gestured for me to look inside. I approached and saw that I couldn't see my face, my body, my arms, or anything that I normally saw in the mirror. I only saw a completely illuminated figure where energy flowed, forming a person, but no features were recognizable. I immediately got scared, thinking of my children, and I said, "I'm dead." He smiled with an expression that exuded calm and wisdom, as if he had heard a joke, and he said, "These words, I know your loved ones are waiting for you at home, and I assure you, you will return soon. I just wanted to tell you that what you are seeing is not paradise. It is a higher reality. This is not yet your time. Remember that your body could leave the earth at any moment. That's why I want to show you your life as you are living it now." Suddenly, in my mind, all of my life began to spin like a film at high speed. I could see every moment, my face during the day, my rare smiles, moments of sadness, tough days, and the little time I spent with my children. The more I saw my life on earth, the more I understood the life I was leading. The film suddenly stopped when I was young, and I found myself looking at a flower. When I was little, I had said, "One day I will open a flower shop, and it will be the biggest in my town." That dream, now forgotten in the chaos of my daily life, resurfaced with all its passion. The man looked into my eyes and said, "You have not fully lived your life. You think everything is your fault, but in life, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone is a sinner. Remember that life is only one, and sometimes doing what we love is what puts everything in place." Normally, I couldn't grasp the meaning of those words right away. In my life, many people had suggested that I open my own business, but I only saw the negative side of life: money, expenses, bills, and my 3 children to support. However, there were many neighbors who, seeing my skill and precision, always told me, not jokingly, that they would lend me money if I wanted to open something. Surely people would have appreciated my kindness and good taste, especially for flowers. While I was there, immersed in that vision, everything seemed easier, more possible. Every idea of mine shone with a tangible light, and there was nothing that could stop me. I was still reflecting on this as I felt myself being sucked in, and everything around me became dark in an instant. I opened my eyes and was sitting in the seat of my car, my heart still filled with the sensation of that extraordinary experience. I don't know how it was possible to have that vision, but since then a year has passed. A year in which I slowly left my previous jobs to dedicate myself entirely to realizing my dream, opening a flower shop. That shop became my salvation, literally. In just a few years, I paid off my debts and was able to provide my children with much more than just a simple bowl of soup. Of course, it required hard work, but now I worked for myself, doing something I loved every day. I often think about how different it would have been if I had had the strength to take this step earlier. And then I think that perhaps if I hadn't had that vision, I would still be stuck in the difficult situation before. I have decided to share this experience over the years, hoping that it can be inspiring for those who find themselves in the same situation I was in and have never had the strength to change things. Because it's not always luck that guides change, but sometimes it's the will to pursue our dreams, knowing that someone out there will lend us a hand. And in the end, that dream will become the sweetest reality, capable of bringing tears of joy for the beauty of what we have created. Thank you for listening to the story until the end. I hope it has been inspiring for all of you and for your daily lives. I simply ask you to support the channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and a comment. I would be truly grateful for this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.